This is Deep Night Whispers. Tonight, we open a file that was never meant to be found. The story begins in a place that is missing from most maps. A narrow valley cut between two ridges in the deep Appalachian interior, a place settlers once rode past without stopping, where the fog sat low to the ground like a sleeping animal, and where the forest seemed to grow just a little too close to the road. Locals called it Devil's Hollow. Names like that do not appear by accident. Someone meant it as a warning. Someone tried to speak the truth before history swallowed their words. But no warning stopped the Holloways. They arrived sometime in the early 1800s, 7 families, though no one can say for certain how many of them were related even then. They came with wagons of crude furniture, homemade rifles, and a way of looking at strangers that said clearly, "We don't want your world, and we do not plan to join it." They built fast. Cabins of stacked timber, pig pens, corn patches that clawed at the thin mountain soil, a single dirt track leading in but never back out. For generations, the Holloways did not leave Devil's Hollow. Children were born, children died, and the family never once looked beyond the tree line for help. They married only each other, cousin to cousin, brother to sister. No outsiders allowed. The surrounding mountain towns knew they existed, everyone did, but speaking of them aloud felt like tempting something ancient. On rare occasions, a stranger passing through would claim they saw one of the Holloways watching from the tree line, pale, silent, always alone. They never waved, never spoke. They just stared, as if trying to remember whether the outside world was real or only something they'd once heard described in a story. Over time, the Holloways began to change. First came the strange eyes, pale blue, almost colorless. Then the jaws, narrow, recessed. Children born with teeth that never fully erupted, hands that bent at wrong angles, skulls that seemed too thin for the brain inside. Many did not survive their first winter. Those who did changed Devil's Hollow permanently. Because the Holloways believed one thing with the devotion of a religion: blood was only pure if it never left the family. The mountain became their cathedral, their isolation, their doctrine. And over the years, the children born in Devil's Hollow went from strange to deformed to something almost unrecognizable. The outside world did nothing. No officials came, no doctors, no missionaries. Devil's Hollow was a rumor, and rumors do not receive rescue. By 1870, the Holloways had become almost entirely nocturnal, not by preference, by necessity. The sunlight hurt their eyes. Bright light caused seizures. Their bodies had adapted to shadow, and shadow became the only place they could survive. Travelers who rode near the valley at night began to report something that sounded like a folk tale. Lantern lights, moving silently through the trees but held at waist height, as if by someone too small or not standing upright. Some said they heard laughter, not joyful human laughter, something broken, something childlike, but without warmth. When asked why no lawman ever rode in, the locals always answered the same way: no one goes in after dark, and no one goes twice. But the true horror of Devil's Hollow did not reveal itself until 1932. A young woman appeared in town, barefoot and bleeding, wearing a torn, mud-stained nightgown. She had walked 5 miles without stopping. Her lips were blue from cold. Her arms were covered in bite marks, small ones, as if from a child's mouth. She said her name was Sarah Holloway. Her voice shook. Her eyes never stopped scanning the windows. And she kept repeating one sentence over and over. "They're not dead. They don't die in there." Doctors treated her for exposure. The sheriff tried to question her. She answered every question the same way, softly, mechanically. "My baby didn't breathe right. They said he wouldn't live, so they told me I had to feed him to the others. But I ran." Every man in that room went still. Sarah was 17. She had delivered a boy 2 days earlier, and in Devil's Hollow, a baby who could not survive was not buried. It was given back to the family, not for mourning, for eating. The sheriff tried to dismiss it, mountain madness, starvation hallucination, but the nurse who examined her confirmed every word. The infant had not been stillborn. He had lived for exactly 17 minutes, just long enough to cry. Sarah escaped, only because the family believed she would return willingly after dark, as every Holloway did when they tried to run. They never chased. They only waited. Sarah's body was covered in bruises. Not adult bruises. Bruises made by hands the size of a child's. She was placed under guard. That night, every dog in town began howling at once, all facing the trees. The sheriff sat outside Sarah's door with a rifle until dawn. In the morning, she was gone. The lock was still bolted from the inside. The window was still shut. But her bed was empty, and the blankets were pressed down, as if someone small had knelt on top of them. She was never seen again. The official report said, "Patient likely fled during night. Case closed." No one believed it, but no one reopened the file. Devil's Hollow remained where it had always been, just beyond the edge of curiosity, and just close enough to hear the wind carry sounds you prayed were not human. Because people swore they sometimes heard crying from that direction, the kind of crying a newborn makes when it wants to live, and something else decides it shouldn't. They say the Holloways kept no written records, no family Bible, no birth or death dates carved into wood, nothing that could be traced or studied. But there was a record, written in bone, written in faces, written in every generation that came into the world weaker, stranger, more broken than the last. Sarah Holloway's baby, the one who lived 17 minutes, was not the first child born with those deformities. He was simply the first one born to a mother who tried to save him. For over a century, the Holloways believed that a sick or malformed child could not leave the family, not even in death. Those born unable to swallow, or breathe properly, or focus their eyes, were not buried. They were offered, not to God, not to nature, to the family itself. A closed system, a circle of flesh sustaining itself. A lineage feeding on its own failures. The oldest stories say that it began as a mercy, a way to prevent children from starving slowly. But by the time Sarah was born, it was no longer mercy. It was ritual. No outsider knew how many children died that way. 10, 50, hundreds, across generations. The Holloways did not count their dead. They absorbed them, the hollow-eyed children. By the late 1800s, every surviving Holloway shared the same traits. Pale eyes drained of pigment, narrow jaws with missing or partial teeth, thin limbs that bent unnaturally, skin so pale it seemed bruised even when untouched. They rarely spoke above a whisper. Many did not speak at all. The younger children learned by watching. They followed older family members through the woods, like silent shadows, always barefoot, always moving together. Some walked upright, some crawled. Locals began calling them the hollow-eyed children. They weren't ghosts. They weren't animals. They were human, but barely recognizable as such. No one dared approach them. Those who saw them said they moved like a hive, not individuals, but fragments of one organism reacting to a single will. Some believe there was a patriarch, an elder, who commanded them. Others say the family acted on instinct, alone a survival behavior bred over generations of isolation. What is certain is this: once a Holloway was born. They belonged to the Holloways forever. The last birth. In 1956, the last recorded Holloway child was born. A midwife who lived 3 valleys away claimed she heard screaming from Devil's Hollow late at night, not adult screaming, but the high, shrill cry of a newborn. No baby's cry carried that far, unless something was terribly wrong. 2 nights later, she rode up the old trail with a lantern. She never reached the cabin. She found blood on the ground, small handprints, finger marks in the mud that looked as if something had been dragged backward into the trees. She dropped the lantern and ran. Hours later, her husband found her in the road below, barefoot, shivering violently, unable to speak. When she finally did, she said only one thing: "That was not a baby, and I was not meant to see it." The Holloways vanished completely after that winter. No smoke from cabins, no movement in the fields, nothing but silence. Devil's Hollow was abandoned, or so everyone thought. The geneticists arrive. In 1976, 2 doctors, Dr. Livingston and Dr. Howe, working on a government-funded study of isolated genetic clusters in Appalachia, found a single surviving Holloway male. He had been taken in by distant cousins and raised under a different surname. He was 22. He could not speak. He could not raise his arms fully. His mouth held only 10 malformed teeth. He walked with a sideways gait, knees turned inward, shoulders hunched. His skull, when scanned, showed abnormalities that had only ever been documented in extreme inbreeding experiments performed on laboratory animals. Doctors wrote in their notes, "This may be the most genetically damaged surviving human lineage ever recorded in North America." There was only one question the researchers could not answer: if this was a survivor, what did the ones who never left Devil's Hollow look like? The question no one could ask. Records show that Dr. Livingston attempted to get permission to survey the land. His request was denied. The sheriff warned him bluntly, "If you start digging around that place, you ain't gonna find bones. You're gonna find what's left of the Holloways, and they're not all dead." He withdrew his request the next day. The government closed the inquiry. Funding ended. The surviving Holloway patient was quietly placed in long-term care under a sealed identity. Dr. Livingston's private notes contain one final entry: There are still children unaccounted for. Today, Devil's Hollow is still marked on some maps. Nothing grows there. No houses stand. No one has legally lived on that land since the 1950s. But hikers who cross the ridge sometimes report strange things. Stunted footprints in the mud. The sound of children laughing far away, echoing. Pale shapes watching from the trees. A smell like rotting milk and iron. Small bones arranged in circles. Park rangers offer the same explanation every time. Coyotes. People nod, pretend to believe it, and walk faster. But there is one last detail. Satellite scans taken in 2019 revealed heat signatures in Devil's Hollow. Something warm-blooded still lives there. Something that moves between the abandoned cabins at night. Something small, something quiet. Something that has never seen the outside world. For a time, Devil's Hollow was left alone. The state stopped trying to survey it. Locals stopped telling stories about it. Even the church stopped praying over it. But the Holloways had already crossed the line that separates a forgotten family from a legend that must eventually be challenged. Someone always goes looking. 1991, the first expedition. In early spring of 1991, 3 men from Charleston arrived in town with topographic maps and military-grade camping gear. They said they were researching unrecorded Appalachian settlements. The locals warned them. They laughed. They spent 2 days preparing, then hiked into Devil's Hollow, just as the sun was beginning to fall behind the ridge. The next morning, campers on the opposite slope reported hearing 2 sharp gunshots, then silence. Those men never came out. Their tent was eventually found near the tree line, empty, dry, with their firewood still stacked neatly beside it. Their backpacks were still there, but their boots were missing. Every one of them had walked into the woods barefoot. There were no tracks, as if the forest itself had swallowed them whole. The official conclusion was lost in wilderness. But a park ranger who hiked the site later said something he never repeated in front of his superiors. No signs of wildlife scavenging, no signs of struggle. It looked like they stood up, walked away, and let something take them. 2004. The photographer. In 2004, a nature photographer named Evelyn Morris became fascinated with ghost towns and abandoned homesteads. She was intelligent, methodical, and calm under pressure. She was also the kind of person who believed every mystery could be solved by walking straight into it. She entered Devil's Hollow alone. Her last documented photo, timestamped 5:42 p.m., shows her standing outside a rotted cabin, smiling, holding up 2 fingers, as if to say, "I am still safe." Later that night, her camera began taking photos on its own time triggered by motion. 12 pictures, all taken between 2:13 a.m. and 2:21 a.m. Every single one was pitch black. Except photo number 9. That image shows a faint shape impossible to fully identify, crawling on all 4s at the edge of the frame. Its limbs are too long, its head hangs forward, its ribs are visible, and directly beside it, a smaller shape, child-sized. They are not attacking, not running, just watching the camera in utter stillness. Evelyn was never seen again. Her body was never found. Her camera was returned by mail to her family by someone who never left a return address. Why? The chewing sounds. 2 years after Evelyn disappeared, a paranormal research group placed audio recorders in 3 abandoned Appalachian settlements, including Devil's Hollow. Most captured nothing but wind. But one recorder, placed near the foundation of a collapsed Holloway cabin, captured 7 hours of audio. For the first 4 hours, nothing. Then, at 2:19 a.m., something begins. Chewing. Slow. Wet. Rhythmic. Not animal chewing, human chewing. Someone eating without speaking. Then faint movement. Footsteps. But not adult footsteps. Small. Dragging slightly. Then a sound like tiny fingers tapping the microphone, followed by a single exhale, a soft, fluttering breath. Just before dawn, the chewing stops. The recorder was recovered with small bite marks on its outer casing. The teeth marks did not match any known animal. Why no bones are found? Skeptics always ask the same question. If the Holloways still exist, where are the bodies? The answer is older than the family itself. Bodies do not leave the hollow. Every child too weak to live is consumed. Every elder who dies becomes part of the ritual. Every stranger who enters becomes food, not evidence. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is left. A closed organism, self-recycling. No forensic remains. It is not mythology. It is biology. The underground theory. Survey scans taken in 2019 showed thermal activity beneath the soil, not from fire, not from springs. From movement. Many now believe the Holloways abandoned the upper cabins long ago. That they moved below ground, into root basements, collapsed mine shafts, the old limestone pockets under the ridge, a warren of tunnels, some natural, some dug by hand over generations. Dark rooms where light never enters, where malformed eyes never need to adjust, where children who never learn speech move silently in packs, feeding on whatever the mountains deliver to them. Or whoever. Today, no one enters Devil's Hollow at night anymore. Even hunters stay away. Not because they think they will die, but because they think something will watch them live. Something that knows hunger down to its marrow. Something that remembers that long ago, when a child was born broken, it did not cry for help. It cried for food. And the family listened. For decades, Devil's Hollow waited. Not loudly, not violently, just patiently. The mountain had learned long ago that human curiosity brings food. And food always comes back. The missing boy. In the fall of 2018, a 9-year-old boy named Aiden Carter disappeared during a family camping trip in West Virginia. Search dogs found his footprints leading off the trail toward a ravine. They followed them until the soil turned to leaf rot. Then the prints changed. From boot prints to bare feet. Tiny ones, side by side with Aiden's. Walking with him, not chasing, not dragging, escorting. No bodies were recovered, no blood, no clothing. The case remains open. But one of the search team members said something that never made it to the official report. We kept hearing breathing, not behind us, under us, like something was moving underground beneath our feet, following our voices. He never returned to the site again. The drone footage. In 2021, an independent filmmaker sent a drone into Devil's Hollow while scouting for a documentary. The drone recorded 4 minutes of tree canopy, then abruptly dipped under the branches as if something had struck it. The camera stabilized momentarily at ground level. That's when it captured something nobody has explained. A figure crawling away from the drone. Not walking, crawling backward, spine arched, joints bending wrong, hands slapping the mud in unnatural rhythm. The body was small. The limbs were long. The skin was gray-white, hair patchy, head turning too slowly. It did not flee like an animal. It slid back into the tree line, as if returning to somewhere below the roots. The drone feed cut out. When the filmmaker retrieved the crash device, he found bite marks on the casing. Human-shaped. Too small to belong to any adult. The breathing in the ground. That same year, a park ranger responding to illegal trapping near the ridge knelt beside an abandoned burrow hole. He heard breathing, not wind, not animal growling, breathing, slow, wet, mouth breathing, coming from the earth itself. He called out. The breathing stopped instantly. Then, after a 10-second silence, he heard tiny footsteps move deeper underground, not running, crawling. He never returned to the ridge without a partner again. The government files, Freedom of Information Act, requests reveal 3 sealed field reports concerning Devil's Hollow between 1988 and 2009. All 3 contain the same phrase. Site should remain unentered. Structural instability. No recoverable remains expected. Government language can hide anything. Especially the absence of remains. Especially when there are never remains to find. The truth. No one says aloud, the Holloways did not die out. They adapted. When their bones softened, they moved to places light could not reach. When their limbs twisted, they learned to crawl. When their speech collapsed, they communicated by sound. They became what their blood demanded. A closed system, a self-feeding lineage. No outsiders, no burials, no bodies left behind. Just breathing beneath the forest floor, waiting for hunger. Waiting for opportunity, waiting for footsteps. To this day, if you stand on the ridge at dusk, you may hear it. Not birds, not wind, but a faint chewing sound in the leaves. A child's laugh without joy. And if you are very unlucky, you may see something pale watching you between the trees, not standing, waiting. As if deciding whether you are food or family. In Devil's Hollow, those words mean the same thing. Final line. Deep night, whispers, signature, ending. And so, the mountain keeps its secret. The children remain unseen, their voices remain underground. And the Hollow, as always, does not call you in. It simply waits. For someone to walk in willingly. Because in that forgotten valley, nothing truly dies. It merely returns to where the family can reach it. The night remembers, and the Hollow still hungers.